The operation began with intense preparation aboard the USS Kearsarge. Marines from the amphibious strike group moved through the well decks and staging areas with focused determination. They packed heavy combat loads into their rucksacks, spare uniforms, medical kits, extra ammunition, breaching charges, grenades, and water. Every item was checked and rechecked. Rifles were cleaned, optics zeroed, and magazines loaded with fresh rounds. Body armor was adjusted, helmets strapped on, and night vision devices tested in the dim red light of the ship's interior. At the same time, the combat vehicles were made ready. Amphibious combat vehicles, ACVs, were driven onto the well decks, fueled to capacity, and loaded with ammunition for their machine guns and grenade launchers. Crews performed final mechanical checks on tracks, engines, and communication systems. LCAC hovercraft sat nearby, their massive fans and skirts inspected for any sign of wear. The vehicles were chained down securely so they could survive the transit across the water and hit the beach ready for immediate combat. On the flight decks and hangar bays, fast boat crews prepared their rigid hull inflatable boats, RHIBs. They loaded heavy machine guns, ammunition, and fuel, tested engines, and secured communications gear. These fast boats would be used to strike Iranian naval ships and the vessels transporting mines directly on the water. Colonel Marcus Reynolds, the strike group commander, gathered the Marines for one final briefing. He stood in front of a large digital map of the Hormuz coastline and explained every phase in clear detail. The ACVs would storm the beach to seize and destroy the IRGC command line and weapon storage facilities, while the fast boats would attack Iranian naval ships and mine transport boats in the sea. Frigates positioned offshore would provide missile support when called upon. Colonel Reynolds emphasized speed, aggression, and coordination. "We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we leave them with nothing," he told the Marines. The assault launched with perfect timing. The well-deck doors of the USS Kearsarge opened, and the amphibious combat vehicles rolled down the ramps into the sea. Their tracks churned through the water as they headed straight for the Iranian coastline. LCAC hovercraft followed closely behind, riding on cushions of air and carrying additional troops and equipment. At the same moment, fast boats were lowered from the ship and roared across the water toward Iranian naval vessels and the boats transporting sea mines. The Marines and the ACVs approached the coastline under the cover of naval gunfire support. The moment the vehicles reached the beach, ramps dropped and the Marines poured out, forming into assault teams and pushing inland with speed and aggression. The ACVs rolled forward behind them, providing mobile fire support with their machine guns and grenade launchers as they advanced toward the IRGC command line and weapon storage facilities. The fighting on the coastline was fierce but one-sided. Marines cleared bunkers and trenches with rifles and grenades while the ACVs suppressed enemy positions. They moved quickly through the defensive line, reaching the main IRGC command post and the large underground weapons storage area. Demolition charges were placed on key structures and storage bunkers. Explosions ripped through the facility as the IRGC's command line and weapon stockpiles were systematically destroyed. At sea, the fast boats executed their own daring attacks. They raced toward Iranian naval ships and the vessels carrying sea mines, unleashing heavy machine gun fire and precision strikes. Iranian ships tried to maneuver and return fire, but the fast boats were too quick and too aggressive. Several Iranian naval vessels were crippled or sunk, and the boats transporting mines were destroyed before they could deploy their deadly cargo. From offshore, American frigates joined the fight. Their missile launchers elevated and fired in sequence. Each missile streaked toward targets whose exact locations had been shared in real time by the Marines on the ground and the fast boat crews. The naval missiles slammed into remaining IRGC positions with devastating accuracy, further crippling the enemy's ability to coordinate or resupply. The combined pressure from the beach assault, fast boat attacks, and naval missile strikes proved overwhelming. Within a short time, the IRGC command line along the Hormuz coastline was shattered, and their main weapon storage facilities were reduced to rubble. The Marines secured the area, raised the American flag over the captured positions, and began consolidating their gains. With the coastline now under American control and the IRGC's command and supply capabilities crippled, the first oil tankers that had been waiting offshore began to move cautiously toward the strait. Their captains sounded horns in celebration as they passed through waters that had been closed for far too long. The shipping lane that feeds the global economy was beginning to flow again. Colonel Marcus Reynolds stood on the deck of the USS Kearsarge, watching the live feeds as the Marines secured the coastline and the first tankers edged forward. He turned to his staff and said quietly, "We took the command line. We destroyed the storage. The strait is starting to breathe again." The amphibious strike group had delivered a powerful blow. The Marines who stormed the beach, the fast boat crews who attacked at sea, and the naval ships that provided missile support had worked together with exceptional coordination. Their actions had significantly weakened the Iranian threat and opened a critical section of the strait. While the immediate coastline is now secure, the broader fight is not yet finished. Preparations are already underway for the next major objective, the eventual capture of Karg Island. Additional forces, including elements of the 101st Airborne Division, continue to deploy in the Middle East to support the final push. The soldiers and Marines on the coastline stood together, sharing water and quiet words of respect. The link-up between the ground assault and the sea operations had been seamless and effective. Their combined strength had achieved a critical victory in the long fight for the Strait of Hormuz. Colonel Marcus Reynolds looked out over the strait where the first tankers were now visible on the horizon. The American flag continued to fly high over the captured positions. The final battle for control of the Hormuz coastline had taken a decisive turn, and American forces were now the ones dictating the pace.